Well, I think if you compare winter prices over winter prices, actually it's slightly lower. That's not an excuse for where we are right now. But Rhode Island and New England have high energy costs, and this is one of the reasons why we're very happy that the Secretary's here talking about ways that the federal government is helping us control that cost. So winter, if you're going to compare it, you got to compare winter cost with winter cost and spring cost with spring cost.
Summer to winter.
Summer, yeah.
It's going up.
Well,
22%.
April, yeah. The summer, but that happens historically.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that is new, and so we have to kind of control. We have to measure that November through the end of March as a time frame where the energy costs have been historically higher.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks, give me 1 second. I appreciate everybody coming out. Ray, would you like to go first?
Hola, well, we got a different question, just real quick, Governor. What's going to happen with Hasbro now that they want to move from the state?
Yeah, well, that's not for sure. We're in contact with the CEO, Chris Cox, and certainly working directly with Mayor Gregory in Pawtucket. We expect to follow up with conversations. We've heard this story before, and so we're going to work together to make sure that we're doing everything we can to maintain Hasbro, who was founded in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, right? One of the largest toy companies in the country and the world is located here, and we have every intention to make sure that they stay.
When was the last time you had spoken to Hasbro before this news broke?
I think probably in the first quarter of this year, we checked base with them in terms of whether there was anything on the horizon or anything that we needed to talk about. At that point in time, there was nothing that indicated that they would be leaving our state, and so right now we're going to figure that when we meet with the leadership, which I should be before the end of the week, we'll continue the conversations to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep Hasbro here in the state of Rhode Island.
Can we get Channel 12 back here?
Hi, Secretary.
Hi.
Out of the $32 million, it says it's first come, first serve. How many people do you think of Rhode Island will be able to benefit
Well,
from
it
this
totally
program?
depends on the House, and it also depends on how many of the coordinated resources that Rhode Island will apply to this as well. So they get weatherization funds, they've got their own funds, and we're applying these rebates. So it really does depend and depend on what the homeowner needs. But on average, it's less than $10,000, probably about $8,000 per home. So you can do the math and figure out how many homes can benefit.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
What are some of the specific reasons why we chose this home to come through today?
Well, one is that they had the work done earlier this year, but it was just weatherization. So it wasn't the rebate program because we're just launching that. And what we want to do is to emphasize that these two programs fit together. And so if you have your home weatherized and you get appliances on top of it that make you energy efficient, that you can save a whole lot of money, both in purchase of the appliances, because you don't have to pay for anything, and then making sure you can weatherize, you don't have to pay anything, and then of course in the monthly savings. So this was a home that we wanted to give her the opportunity to know that we were going to pay for an induction stove, an electric stove, and take advantage of the weatherization.
All lowering costs is a big deal,
Yep.
and the cost for electricity in Rhode Island is historically high considering the rest of the country. But what the Secretary is bringing to the table here is going to help people lower their energy costs, and certainly that's going to be very helpful with our goals on our 2030 plan, raising incomes, personal wealth. By the way, this owner here, first year in a home ownership, in her first home. So this is something that's very important to us, and when we asked her how she felt, she said, good.
She would, with a big smile on her face.
Secretary Granholm, with Ford's most recent announcement, their continued retrenchment from EVs and the alarming calculation that on their most recent stockholder report, on certain EVs, they were losing $44,000 per car. What has to happen, if you will, for another retrenchment to take place in the American auto industry to sort of dive back into EVs?
Well, I do think that a lot of that has to do with where consumers are. And I think that there's a couple things that cause consumers to have second thoughts. One is that there are a lot of people who are talking down EVs. If you own an EV, you don't want to go back because it's so much cheaper to own. Once people learn of the incentives to purchase an EV, the $7,500 tax credit at the dealership, the incentive to purchase a used EV, the $4,000 again at the dealership, and then how much money they can save every month. If you are charging up if you are filling up a 15 gallon tank, you're spending $45 to fill that up. If you're just charging it at home, you're spending about $11 to fill it up. That difference every month makes a huge difference for people. So getting them to understand how much they can save is important. Other countries, you're seeing, once you have a certain penetration of EVs, you're seeing hand over fist an uptake in that EV because people like the experience.
Should there be equal incentives to bring people into a step forward so that you're positioning gas electric EVs, ultimately hybrid electric EVs, as a possible intermediary step? Should the, if you will, the incentives align with those vehicles as well?
Yeah. I mean, for hybrid, for plug-ins, plug-in batteries, the incentives are there for those too. And we're seeing a much greater uptick in those hybrids because people are more comfortable, right, taking that as a step first. And so those sales are actually really significantly increased. We've had, I think, there's been a 400% increase in the purchase of electric vehicles since the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration. It's a little bit lower than what was anticipated, that is true. But we expect that we'll continue to see that rise as we see more charging stations put in because people have range anxiety and they want to make sure they can charge it as well. So we've got about 192,000 publicly available charging stations across the country, about 2,000 coming on every month. And so more we see, the more EVs I think will be purchased.
Thank you. Time for one more question.
One of the hot topics as it pertains, I know the governor well knows, pertaining to energy in the state has been the implementation of offshore wind, not just obviously for Rhode Island, but southern New England. I know a lot of people are excited about the potential of that, but there's also some concerns, not only as it factors into marine life, but pieces washing up on shore of different equipment. I'm wondering if you've been briefed on that, and what would you say to some locals who might be concerned about offshore wind?
Yeah, I'd say first, there are thousands and thousands of offshore wind turbines across the world that are up, and their accidents are very few. One just happened to be in this region, but that is rare. It is extremely rare. What the offshore wind industry does is provide stable, long-term, clean power. It makes, in fact, there have been studies done that offshore wind will actually reduce prices over time. And with the federal government's help on installing and building up those supply chains here, it is such a great thing. I mean, Rhode Island has been such a leader in this, and it's something that people look to you in gratitude that you're willing to lean in on it, and you're going to be you will have cut the wake for the rest of the states to be able to do it. The West Coast is now looking at it. It's a little bit different because their offshore wind platforms might be floating as opposed to stationary bottom, but nonetheless, if you look at places where you've got a lot of offshore wind, people are utterly grateful that they don't have to rely upon unstable fossil fuels that may be traded around the world.
And for Rhode Island, I've mentioned this a few times, we have a footprint that is not that large, physically, but our backyard is the Atlantic Ocean. It's a big backyard. And for us to take advantage of that, putting people to work, we're manufacturing the platforms that are being used up and down the East Coast, and also making sure that we're helping control our long-term energy needs to meet some of the goals that we've set on the Act on Climate. These all work together, so it's an economic and environmental issue for us, and it also allows us to use a resource that we're not going to have an oil well, right? We're not going to have a natural gas line, but we do have the ability on wind, and with the federal government, we're hoping that we'll put a little plug in that we get the same type of subsidy strategies as have been put in place for the fossil fuel states that have really taken advantage of that, and that's one of the reasons they have lower energy costs. Let's make sure that the new energy source, which is wind, gets the same subsidy, same type of subsidy, so that we can continue to work on behalf of the people that live here, lower our costs, at the same time help our environment.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, everyone.
A 23% rate hike for Rhode Islanders. That's under discussion right now. Are you concerned about that rate hike coming in October?
Well, I think if you compare winter prices over winter prices, actually it's slightly lower. That's not a an excuse for where we are right now, but Rhode Island and New England have high energy costs, and this is one of the reasons why we're very happy that the Secretary's here talking about ways that the federal government is helping us control that cost. So winter, if you're gonna compare it, you gotta compare winter cost with winter cost and spring cost with spring cost.
Summer to winter.
Summer, yeah.
It's going up
Well,
23%.
April, yeah, the summer, but that happens historically. That's not something that is new. And so we have to kind of control, we have to measure that November through the end of March as a time frame where the energy costs have been historically higher. So I think the public needs to know that we're doing everything we can. And when you compare the winter cost last year with the winter cost this year, is slightly lower, even though it shows a 23% increase from the summer rates. So we kind of measure based on winter rates and summer rates, and if there was a big spike of 23% on our winter rates compared to winter rates year over year, then we would feel as though that there was a serious problem that we need to address right now.
All right, thanks
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.